Welcome back to the Futurist New Deal podcast. I am here with my friend, the Honorable Tony Kalu, and we are going to discuss the growing tech industry in Nigeria and in his region, the ABIA state, for which he has had a good deal of sway. And it's an exciting place to be, an exciting time in history, and we want to discuss what is coming down the pipeline for the ABIA state and for the Nigerian people. Good afternoon, Tony. How are you today?
Very well. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
Yes, yes. Um, and in a previous conversation, we touched briefly on this subject. We talked about the electrification of your country, a project that is still ongoing, but one that has made great progress in recent years. We talked about the access to data. I happen to believe that data for all, so to speak, is akin to a human right. And I'm also inclined to think that if there were one kind of technology that could transform rural and less developed regions around the world, it might be something like what Amazon and Google, and most famously the Musk organization, Elon Musk, are working on in the form of Starlink technology. That is data satellites that will beam low cost, high speed data around the world. What do you think about the prospects for Nigerians in seeing improvements in these various kinds of infrastructure?
Well, like we talked about before, but we may be able to dive into it a little bit deep today. The truth is, we all know how important technology is. In fact, it has become our way of life. Just an ordinary cell phone, which it used to be an ordinary, um, could just be just to make a phone call in the past, receive a phone call, possibly send a text message, and that was it. But today, you and I know that a cellular phone, which is a mobile phone, is no longer just a handheld cell phone. It's literally a handheld computer because you can do almost anything you want from a mobile phone. And at one point, some years ago, someone told me, which is one of my cousins, Uncle, can you please buy me a cell phone? It's really, a smartphone. I was like, okay, fine. I thought you were calling me from a phone already. She said, yes, I have a phone, but it's not a smartphone. I need the smartphone to do my schoolwork. And it occurred to me now, smartphone is not just something we use for ordinary phone conversation and so on and so forth, but these children or these students in Africa can actually use it for schoolwork. We're not talking about people who are actually working using it for their regular day work, which we do here. So what I'm trying to say here is this. Nigeria has come a long way in the area of technology. I remember about 15 years ago to 20 years ago, even, um, when you needed a cell phone, a mobile phone, it was over 100,000 naira back then, which is maybe in today's money, thousands of dollars. If you check the rate and the worth of equivalent, is about $1,000 just to get a cell phone line. But today in Nigeria, with 100 naira, which is a fraction or a 10% of a dollar, you can have a mobile line. So what it tells me that we have gone from a place where it was not, cellular phone or having a mobile device was not accessible to many, to now most people have more than two, three, four different lines. But that also explains how far we have come and how far we need to go. The phone number that you call me on is a number that I have used in the United States for like 20 years. I have not changed it. It does everything I need it to do. I take my call both nationally and internationally. It works. Now, why do people need several lines in Nigeria? It's not because they just want you to call them in different numbers or because they want to be on a phone call with more than one person at a time. No, it simply means that sometimes they don't have adequate reception. from one particular company to another. So they have to switch to another company. Or if you're not able to reach them on one particular line with a particular company, you will have to call them on another one. The person is available, just not reachable, because the mobile number will tell you that the person you're calling is not reachable, and they could be standing right next to you, but you can't reach them. So you see, in as much as we have the accessibility to certain kind of technology, we don't have the perfection yet. We still have a long way to go. So this goes even in the area of energy power. I mean, um, there are people who will live in an area where they can probably get access to power for maybe 20 hours out of the 24 hours, maybe in a total of 5 days or 6 days in a week. And there are people who may just be able to have access to power maybe few hours in the entire week. So the progress continues. We have definitely, made progress, but just not enough. And when it comes to in the area of data usage, we do something you call pay as you go, which is you purchased and you use. We don't have monthly, at least not accessible to everybody. The monthly plan that we normally have here in the West, you have a particular contract for in a month, maybe you pay $100, $50, whatever it is. You have unlimited data, unlimited use, text and talk. We don't have that in Nigeria. If there is, it's not available to the public. Maybe a few, people do have it, but not most. And in that case, that is seriously needed. I would suggest any company that can move to Nigeria and set up this monthly plan, even if it means using their own primary phones device, in the sense that you buy our device, we offer you a monthly plan. You can make as much call as you want, receive as much calls as you want, use data unlimited. I don't care if you're on YouTube or internet all day. It's one single bill at the end of the month. No surprises, no increase, no decrease, except if you change your plan. If any company can be ahead of the curve right now and do that, that company will surely, surely succeed. We know what a giant industry communication sector is. I think the richest person in the world is actually his background is in communication. That would be, should I say, Carlos Slim from Mexico, and
Yes,
then
it's a
was on
telecommunications brand.
Bill Gates. So what am I saying? In the area of technology, we're lacking. Um, just a whole range of issues when it comes to technology. I could go as far as um, this call centers that the Indians are doing for the most part for the United States and other countries in the West. You're calling your bank or you're calling an institution or a company, the call is being picked up by someone in New Delhi, India. One of the unfortunate thing with that is some of the people that answer these calls, they have such an accent or not even well coached on what to do. You will struggle to understand, to comprehend, and at the end of the day, someone like me, if I don't have the time, I always insist, please, could you transfer me back to the United States? Let me speak to someone here in the US. My problem is here in the US. I want it to be solved in the US. Not because they couldn't solve it, but we are going back and forth trying to get them to comprehend. I mean, if my problem is resolved while they're on the phone, why would I need to ask them to refer me back to the US? So you come to Aba, which is a major city in Nigeria, which is a very industrial sector in Abia State. Aba has almost everything we need to set up this kind of call centers. When it comes to around our area market, which is one of the largest market in the whole Africa, the governor and the federal government have been able to install equipment that are able to sustain power for almost 24 hours of the day. And that is commendable. That is a step forward, a very big giant step forward. What it tells me is that businesses and companies and shops around that area will be able to enjoy power uninterrupted. as their business continue to thrive. So if you install things like these call centers, there was a time I talked about it with some companies in Philadelphia. If you install these kind of call centers in ABBA, we have a whole host of young graduates who can speak very clean, have good command of English language. They should be able and can be able to handle this kind of job, and that will create thousands and thousands of jobs. So when you look at taking or outsourcing call centers to China, to India, I think Nigeria should be considered, mostly Abia State, mostly Aba. We do have the number, we do have the people to do this kind of work. And they are not even asking for much when it comes to salary. It may be the same thing you're paying the Indians or less, but I would rather have my people have this job than not have it at all. And ABBA is always ready. The graduates in ABBA are always available and ready to do this kind of work.
Very good. And also what you've said about this infrastructure development, particularly telecom investment in Nigeria, it is incredibly interesting. Just in very recent years, Nigeria has pushed above 200 million people, and it is the most populous country on your continent, on the African continent. It is also a country where we could say it's somewhat controversial. It's relatively controversial, maybe not as controversial as some kinds of Western influence, but that China has invested in many kinds of infrastructure around Africa. But they certainly do see the internal logic there, that there's a lot of new industries that will be growing in coming years and decades. And the city of Lagos is the most populous city on the African continent. Now, the district, the state rather in question, the ABIA state, which you have and continue to advocate for, and the ABBA Tech Center, they're a little bit different. We mentioned that some of these kinds of services, high-speed internet, do have some availability in a city like Lagos, not as commonplace. Let's contextualize this conversation a little bit more in the context of the ABBA Tech Center and areas surrounding in the ABIA state. What other kinds of infrastructure projects and considerations? You mentioned that this could become not just a tech hub, but more of a call center hub. What else do you see? Our mutual friend, Osinakachi, he is an academic and futurist of good reputation, and yet even he suffers to some degree from the concern that you mentioned, periodic brownouts, a periodic lack of access to consistent electricity. I was looking at a piece that described how startups in ABIA state, they might spend $800 on electricity in the course of a month, not because this is the cost of the municipal electrical service, but because they're using supplemental diesel generators to power their business at great cost. Are there any other? What is do you think is an overall approach as a policymaker to continuing this growth and to seeing it rolled out in the fastest and way that is best serves the Nigerian people?
Okay. I think at this point, the governor is someone who is a forward-leaning thinker. He's a progressive. That was actually one of the main reasons why I supported him from the onset. Um, Considering everything else, he was someone I could count on who has seen a certain kind of life that he would definitely love to implement in Abia State. With that being said, in the area of shoe production, bags, belts, clothes, we have this this sector is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Yes, you mentioned Lagos. Lagos, Aba could be the next thing, the next best thing to Lagos, if all that needs to be done is put in place the way they should be. We have this gentleman, Sam Hart. His name is Sam Hart. He's the one spearheading a situation in Abia State that has to do with production and quality, and I would say compliance for the most part of all the products coming out from, or goods and services coming out from ABA. And what this gentleman is doing is he's trying to make sure that we're not just producing stuff, that we're producing quality goods. We're producing things that can be exported and they will meet international standards. And he has been doing, he just got into the office and he has been doing a fine job. Knowing him personally, he's a man that has a certain taste. And I know that he will bring that level of quality to bear in this very new role. Now, the governor, like I said before, has done a lot in the area of power when it comes to the area. If they can extend such progress beyond just the area and center it in the entire Aba, municipality, that would be incredible. Because I don't know how a business is supposed to thrive if they have to lose power maybe 40-50% of the time that they're actually in service. I don't know how, I mean, people that deal with perishable items, there is
Mm.
just no way to be able to preserve a large quantity. You have to spend more money, try to bring in little by little just to make sure you don't lose out on the perishable ones, and so on and so forth. So the power situation is a major situation, is an important one, and I would suggest for them to come back. Let's figure out a way to bring in international investors in the area of power. We can go completely, have the private sector take over this. We have NEPA, which was supposed to be the government sector. I think at some point it was privatized, but I don't know if it's still under privatization or if it's gone back to the hands of the government. However, one of the worst names you can mention in Nigeria is NEPA. In fact, if a lady is dating a guy from NEPA, he's not dating the right guy because these are the most hated people, if anything. Because right in the middle of the moment you're watching your soccer, you're enjoying your game, you're having a good time, you're having a party, and the light goes off. I mean, then you start thinking about generators. I am personally looking forward to a day that the use of generator will be a thing of the past in Nigeria. A situation whereby we can have at least 90% of the time the main central power supplying the needed current and power to everyone in
Mm.
Nigeria. So when it comes to business, any kind of business in that ABA sector, power is the key. Road is another thing. In fact, to be honest with you, road is actually more important to power. If way I see it, for instance, yes, it may cost me a lot to keep the place powered up using a generator, but at least it's guaranteed that I can be able to provide myself power. But when I don't have the road to bring in my goods, to bring in my raw materials and equipment that I need, then the situation is a non-starter. So the governor has done a lot. I can send you, I may be able to publish some of the roads that he has already done. But the problem is that he started from somewhere way behind, trying to catch up. So to make progress, it's like so much that he has done is not good enough because there's still a lot of other work, like the more roads that needs to be done. So those are my concerns. In about 3 years from now, he will be stepping down. But my hope is that he will actually push further and do more between now and 3 years. You can still accomplish a lot in 3 years. He just won re-election less than a year ago, so he can still accomplish a lot in 3 years. So I'm hoping he will be able to look into such things. And I am sincerely asking for international investors. Get in touch with some of these guys in ABA. I know a lot of good people that work with him in the administration. Like I mentioned, one of them, Sam Hart. There's another gentleman named Cosmos Ndukwe, JOK. There are so many people within the inner circle that can point you in the right direction. And
Mm.
a good investment in a country of about 200 million people can never be a bad investment. Even if your profit margin is 1%. That is 1% over several millions. So at the end of the day, it adds up and it's definitely worth it.
Mhm. Yes. And just looking at the growth figures of the last decade, I would say that that would be good advice to venture capitalists and investors to make that decision. And also, I would say that this prospect that you've described of improving those two areas of infrastructure, particularly, look very good as well. I had read that just a few, not even 10 years ago, if someone was looking to start a business in this more southern part of the country, many people would say it's a good idea to go to Lagos. But today there is this ABA Tech Center, and there's a hashtag made in ABA, which reflects the particular industries that you described, and also this exciting move. And it is all of these things are going to continue and I believe in a faster and faster way. The the aforementioned mutual friend of ours is Sinakachi, another gentleman who I've interviewed a few times, Chugwu Abdo. We sometimes talk about the prospect of leapfrogging in certain things. So we mentioned trouble with supply chain and transportation. There are technological solutions that may be workarounds to this to some degree from automation, like drone delivery and some other things of this kind. There are technological workarounds to this problem of electrification in the form of new batteries and other ways of conveying that electrification. It's a little bit speculative, but countries like Nigeria would tend to be the ones who would benefit to a high degree as from these technologies, as they would not be in competition, direct competition with municipal services already providing such things.
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts on this concept of an accelerated development in these contexts?
Yes, I do. From what you mentioned about the drone delivery, I had a meeting with a gentleman. He's from Ohio. He works for a medical company. I think it was some kind of pharmaceutical company at the time. And then they were based, a portion of them were based in Ghana. And they were already doing this drone delivery in the area of blood. So let's say someone was in a car crash and they need blood transfusion immediately. Once that call is placed, a drone will bring that blood within minutes, no more than 5 to 10 minutes. The blood is there and a life will be saved. So they have already started this in Ghana. So we talked. We met in I think it was in New Jersey. We met. So we talked about this and we talked at length. He told me that someone was trying to bring them to set up something like that in Ibadan, but they were still working out the details. They have not really settled down on what to do. And I told him this will also be good in my own state. This is something I know a progressive governor like my governor will be interested in. And it's not just blood, all manner of medical equipment and materials that are needed urgently. The drone situation, the mobile medical drone is is a very good thing. Amazon is already using it here in the United States and it's working. And all this company needs is to make sure there are no airports around the area, too close to the area. So at this moment, Abia State does not have airport yet, and I believe in the near future it should be one of the things that they should look into considering. But for now, since we don't have that airport yet, we can't take advantage of the situation, and that is have this company, since they are the ones funding the whole thing. All they need is just a place to set up their tent and begin to do this. So the cost for this blood, I think for this whatever they supply, I believe they subsidize it. Some organization subsidizes, and then the rest may also the federal government may kick in at some point. So it might not even have any cost to the states, but it cannot, it can save a lot of lives. So we talked at length. I said, okay, the next time I meet the governor, I will bring this up to him. He can put a contact person to it to liaise with him and stay in touch with them and see how we can get things like this up and running. In the area of technology, there's a lot that needs to be done. The area, like I said, I don't know if you've been to Nigeria before, but we have made progress on a whole host of issues, but we still have a very long way to go.
Mhm. Yes, and it's an incredible thing to witness. I think in any context, but surely this kind of technology, this kind of automation, and has ha, has a lot to offer this region. And and also we can. I would like to have your concluding thoughts as well. But do you think in the context of this leapfrogging or accelerated benefits, do you think there is any way in which people in the ABIA state and policymakers and leaders of other kinds should focus on preserving traditional byways and cultural properties in the wake of such change? Would you like to address any kind of balance there? And also, if you'd like to include concluding thoughts on the subject of this tech sector discussion, please.
Yes, the decision makers or the guys who work with the governor directly, we call them the ESCOs, the Executive Council of the governor. Um, they have they have a few number of people that I know who are involved in this, and preservation of things like this is not something that we're not mindful of. It is,
Mhm.
and I'm sure at the end of the day they will come away with it's the right thing to do, doing the right thing than just letting it go. Now when it comes to technology, Nigeria is ready for all manner of technology, mostly Abia State. I cannot stress the Abia State enough because when I go to Abia State, I see talents. I see guys who are building cars from scrap. I mean, regular cars from scrap. I see people putting some level of technological idea that will make you wonder if this person were to be given the kind of opportunity and chance that we have, how much more can this person do? There was a time the governor took some individuals from Aba to China to train them on how to produce industrial shoes and to expedite them, to be able to produce them in mass, to be able to know how to advance in the area of shoe production. Um, that was a very good idea, and I applauded him when he did that. But I think we can take it a step further. Instead of taking people to China to train them so they can come back to train others, we can now make deals with companies, give them incentives why they should we can make deals with China or any other company. Now, it doesn't have the country, it doesn't have to be China. It could be United States, it could be Japan, it could be UK. Make deal with them, give them incentives why they is in their own best interest as well to come in and invest in ABBA. Train the people they want. By so doing, they won't have to pay much when it comes to labor. So you develop the workers that you need to use in that state, in that city, which is Aba, and have them do the same work. All you have to do is just set up the plant, bring out the top levels who will advise on how to do these things, and these things will get done. And these guys, I'm telling you, are very intelligent. They can pick up anything in less than no time and might even do it better than the original. So it will never ever be a bad business venture if anyone can take any kind of technological business to ABBA and try to liaise with the guys on the ground. Like I mentioned, Sam Hart is there to make sure the quality of what you're looking for is there. The governor is there to ensure the security that is part of his job. And so on and so forth. I'm sure they will give you all kinds of help and assistance that you need in order to give you a smooth stay and production of whatever you need to do.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. Incredibly fascinating. I will ask one more question along these lines. let's say that it is a given that the Chinese involvement in infrastructure projects on the African continent and in Nigeria has been a net positive. I think the feeling is that this is overwhelmingly the case. But are there any things that you would like to see differently in those relationships with foreign entities, or particularly with those Chinese undertakings? How is how would you like to see that shake out moving forward?
Well, the truth is, about 16 years ago, that was, I think, who was in power? I think it was George Bush. Bill Clinton had stepped down at the time, and George Bush had came to power. Bill Clinton had started the United States outsourcing, um, you know, to China at the time. For businesses, mostly the CEOs and shareholders, that was a good thing to do because it kind of like made the business leaner and probably more efficient. Um, of course, the profits margin rose through the roof because paying the U.S. workers was more expensive than paying a laborer in China or any other country. So at that time, I had gone to China to produce uh, this money counting machine. I don't know, the one you use in banks and
Mhm.
financial institutions. So when I produced them at the time, it was maybe about $150 a piece, which I was intending to sell about close to $300, including my expenses. But by the time I got back, by the time the product came back to US, Walmart had already gone to China and they built their plant in China, but used the China labor. We're able to produce it at a very, very lower rate. So by the time my goods hit the shores of the United States, Walmart was already coming in. Before I could sell half of it, Walmart was on the ground. The same product that I was selling about $280, Walmart was now selling 150. Do you see what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
that derailed my entire strategy on that. So I had only two choices: either recalibrate those machines, sell them to other countries, maybe in Latin America or Africa or whatever, or give it up entirely. So one had to take place. So what I'm trying to say is this: for what China is doing or any other country, let's stick with China in this case. If we can begin to have countries, the West, going to Nigeria, going to ABA to set up tent, to build their plant. Let's say Louis Vuitton decides to go to ABA right now to to build a plant. They can have their expertise. Their expertise can come from China, they can come from anywhere. But the labor can be done by Nigerians and they will still have a quality product. So what I'm trying to say is that um, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and other parts of China are not the only game in town. I think it's time to give a place like Aba a chance and see what they can do because I really believe there's enough talent to produce whatsoever is needed. So if and when I see factories moving from the US to Aba to set up their new tent, factory moving from UK to Aba, then I will know that we have really turned a corner. And it's not just maybe loaning us money or investing in one thing or another. I really need those plans to be set up in Aba so that people can actually have a job, can actually have jobs and be a part of their future.
Mhm. Yes, yes. And you mentioned the state of industry in 2004, in the middle of the United States George W. Bush period. And in since that time, in Nigeria, there's been nearly a fivefold increase in domestic gross domestic product,
Yes.
an incredible growth, and also we would say a commensurate or nearly commensurate increase in human development and quality of life, resulting from this, or certainly to a very high degree. And so all of the things that you have pointed out, all of the advice that you've given to investors here in the course of this conversation, people need to realize, need to stop and to consider that this is a wise advice, and that they must take the long view of this sort of thing, the way that Chinese folks and others are certainly doing in this context. The Honorable Tony Kalu, it's been wonderful speaking with you. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to address the listeners at the Futures New Deal podcast. I haven't been to ABIA State, and I hope to visit very soon. And we will all be following the developments in this region and your work on behalf of the people of southeastern Nigeria. Thank you so much, sir.
If you've enjoyed this show and would like to see more, please like and subscribe. And also check out benzion2020.com for updates on the campaign, and to go to transhumanist-party.org and sign, become a part of the Transhumanist Party.